The potential of an anime chapter in Dead by Daylight has been a topic of discussion for years now, and the chance of one has increased significantly since the 6th anniversary, when the Attack on Titan collection was first announced. And while in these discussions a bunch of anime and manga are considered, there's one I haven't seen talked about too much: Dragon Ball Z. So today, I'm going to be going over the potential of a Dragon Ball Z chapter in Dead by Daylight. In particular, one where a character named Cell is the killer. I understand how weird and random this collaboration may seem at first, but I have quite a few points as to why he'd fit in the game. And whether you're a fan of Dead by Daylight, Dragon Ball Z, or like me both, or hell, even neither, I'll do my best to keep you informed and engaged, make sure nobody's lost while also not boring anyone either. Before I get into that though, I'd like to quickly clear up any potential confusion. For returning viewers of mine, this is not like my typical videos, in the sense that it's not necessarily a theory video. I'm not suggesting that a DBZ chapter is likely to happen in the near future, or hell, even at all. In fact, I think it's incredibly unlikely, and that's exactly the point. This video is hopefully the first of many in a new series of mine called DBD Never Evers, where I cover potential license collaborations I think would be cool while still fitting to Dead by Daylight's theme, and going in depth on any perk or power ideas I have. So if you end up enjoying this video, leave a like to let me know I should continue this series. Or if there's something I can improve on, please leave a comment with your criticism and I'll get to it as soon as I can. And if you have any ideas for future videos in the series, feel free to comment those as well. Don't worry though, I still have plenty of ideas beyond Dragon Ball. Enough prelude though, let's get into the actual video. A quick explanation for those unfamiliar with the game: Dead by Daylight is an asymmetrical horror game featuring 4 survivors and 1 killer, in which the survivors attempt to repair generators and escape the trial, and the killer does everything in their power to stop the survivors and, well, kill them. For those unfamiliar with the show and or character, Cell is an android created by Dr. Gero, hell-bent on death and destruction. The self-proclaimed perfect life form was created using the genetics of Earth's greatest warriors, such as Goku, Vegeta, Piccolo, and Frieza. With all of that said, let's address the first major question: why do I think Cell fits in Dead by Daylight? For my first point, I'd like to direct your attention to Dragon Ball The Breakers. Breakers is an official Dragon Ball game, and an asymmetrical one at that. In this game, 7 ordinary citizens try and survive against a raider, whose goal is essentially to kill everyone. Sound familiar? While it's not exactly a horror game like DBD, it is very similar in many aspects. And furthermore, one of these killer-esque raiders is the perfect lifeform himself. But this point arises a counterpoint of its own. If Cell is already in this official asymmetrical game, why would they ever bother bringing him to Dead by Daylight? And that is a fair argument, as Breakers was only released a year ago and its most recent update was mere weeks ago. However, to put it simply, people don't seem to like this game very much. At the rate it's going, this game can only remain lucrative for so long, if it even is right now. And what better game to fill the hole when Breakers dies than Dead by Daylight? With how popular the game is, managing about 50,000 concurrent players just on Steam, it would surely earn them a lot of money, not to mention the sure-to-be massive player increase DBD will see as a result. Dragon Ball is arguably one of, if not the most popular and iconic anime/manga series of all time. Moving on, Cell is, simply put, a pretty terrifying character, especially in his first form. Watchers of DBZ will remember just how menacing and creepy Cell was when he was first introduced. The sight and mere thought of him absorbing each citizen one by one into his tail without a hint of remorse. The once flourishing cities turned into ghost towns in mere hours is, at least in my opinion, pretty terrifying. And, taking into consideration some of DBD's more recent collabs, a franchise doesn't exactly have to be horror to enter the game. Granted, we've never necessarily seen a non-horror chapter before, but there's a first for everything. One more thing I'd like to at least bring up is Fortnite. For those unaware, Dragon Ball has done multiple collabs with Fortnite at this point, several of the franchise's most popular characters now in the game, one of which being Bulma, which is important to keep in mind for later, and Cell himself has actually been leaked to be coming into the game in the near future. All this to say, Dragon Ball is no stranger to video game collaborations, and for Cell specifically too. Of course, Fortnite is a completely different beast compared to Dead by Daylight, but I thought this was worthwhile to at least mention if nothing else. But then again, I'm not here to argue for this theoretical chapter being likely or hell even possible. I just think it's a fun concept. On that note, I'd like to move on now to what exactly I came up with for this chapter concept. I'm certainly no Rareth Links, nor do I even have any fully fledged out ideas for powers or perks for this video, but I don't exactly have nothing either. For one, I'd like to address what I'm going to refer to as Cell's killer name. In DBD, each killer has a title they're referred to as in-game. For example, Michael Myers is called the Shape, Alien is called the Xenomorph, Freddy Krueger is called the Nightmare, and so on. For this, I think the most obvious choice for Cell is the perfect lifeform, a title Dragon Ball fans are sure to be very familiar with, and also just a pretty cool name. It's a name Cell often refers to himself as too. For his power, which for those unfamiliar is a special ability each killer has to make them more powerful and stand out, I don't have specifics or even really a main power, but I do have something else. In DBZ, Cell has 3 main forms: imperfect Cell, semi-perfect Cell, and of course, perfect Cell. To get to a higher form, Cell needs to absorb beings through his tail to take in their power as his own. Once he's absorbed enough, he'll ascend to his next form. Once he achieves perfect Cell, his tail retracts into his body as he no longer needs it, and he reaches maximum power. So what if, as a part of his power, Cell has a mini Mori similar to Pyramid Head, in which, once the survivors have been hooked twice and subsequently downed, he can absorb the survivors through his tail. With this, he'll start the game as imperfect Cell. Once he does this to 1 or 2 survivors, he'll become semi-perfect Cell, increasing his power via means of faster break speed, walk speed, etc. And once he absorbs 2 or 3 survivors, he will achieve perfection and become perfect Cell. In this form, he once again has some number values increased, but also, every survivor is now permanently inflicted with the exposed status effect, and he can no longer absorb survivors through his tail, as it will have retracted into his form. On top of just sounding really cool, I honestly think that this could be a very immersive and strong power, really making you feel like Cell while not being too overpowered. Of course, it probably needs some other aspect, such as a lunge, but it's a cool foundation. A few more minor things I'd like to touch on before moving on are cosmetics, the potential for voice lines, and Cell being too powerful for Dead by Daylight. For the former, while I'm not sure there's too much skin potential in Dragon Ball, I feel like a blighted Cell would look awesome. For those unfamiliar with DBD, blighted cosmetics are given to most killers, even licensed ones, giving the killer this orange, ooze-like substance that can sometimes drastically transform the killer, like in the case of the Xenomorph. Next, for voice lines, Cell certainly likes to talk a lot, and if they were to bring him to DBD, him being dead silent would feel off to say the least, especially considering how much voice lines can enhance the feel of a character in game, as well as the fact they've been doing them a lot more recently with characters like Chucky, Nicolas Cage, Singularity, and Wesker. And finally, there's the topic of Cell being too powerful. For this, there's the Entity, the sort of god of the Dead by Daylight universe. It's been known to nerf characters before when bringing them into the fog, like Nemesis and Albert Wesker, but granted, it's never had to nerf a character capable of destroying an entire planet with ease, at least not as far as I'm aware. And with all that said, I'd like to move on from Cell, and move on to the other aspects of this theoretical Dragon Ball Z chapter. For those unaware, most Dead by Daylight chapters come with both a new killer and a new survivor, and sometimes a new map. And while it's entirely possible they just do Cell on his own for a chapter, referred to in DBD as a paragraph chapter, I'd say there's a pretty good pick for a survivor in the Dragon Ball universe. And no, it's not Goku. As iconic as he is, Goku being killed by a man with bear traps and a machete doesn't exactly make sense. Instead, I propose Bulma, arguably the most well-known and important human being in the franchise, who doesn't have powers of any kind. There are other picks like Chi-Chi or Mr. Satan, but I still think Bulma makes the most sense for the aforementioned reasons of popularity and story significance. They could always add one, if not both of the other two as separate survivors and or legendary skins. Legendary skins being cosmetics that transform one character into another. And there's been 4 chapters at this point with 2 survivors. As far as a map is concerned, there are a few options they could do, such as Capsule Corp or the planet Namek, but I don't feel like it'd be too necessary. In conclusion, I think a Dragon Ball Z chapter for Dead by Daylight including Cell as a killer and Bulma as a survivor would work fairly well, be extremely lucrative for both parties, and just be pretty neat. If you think so too, I implore you to share this video around to anyone else who might be interested. Of course, this does help me, but if this video gets enough traction, maybe Behavior sees it and looks into making this theoretical, far-fetched concept a real possibility. Anything can happen. If you really like this video and want to see more from me, consider subscribing and turning on notifications so you'll never miss an upload. Only 3% of people who watch my videos are subscribed, and only 16% of those subscribers have notifications on. And if you watch some more of my videos and find out you hate me later, you can always unsubscribe. If you really want to support me, consider becoming a member by clicking the join button on my channel. For only $3 a month, you get a lot of perks, one of which being a shout out at the end of every video. On that note, huge shout out to Tobias M, my one and only channel member who has been so for almost 3 months now. I really appreciate you, seriously. Regardless, I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one.